All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a journey together. We're going to connect the absolute highest levels of global economic philosophy straight down to the literal dirt you hold in your hands. We're looking at the value of everything around us, what we take, how we use it, and honestly, what happens when we push the earth just a bit too far. Here's our quick roadmap for today. We'll start with Section 1, not just free gifts. Then, Section 2 is the sustainability crisis, followed by Section 3, planning for the future. Section 4 brings us to India's land and soil, and we'll wrap it all up with Section 5, saving the ground beneath. Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, not just free gifts. Now, before we can even talk about saving the world, we kind of have to fundamentally redefine how we look at it. So I want to start by asking you a very direct question. Are resources simply free gifts of nature? I mean, when you look at a flowing river, a seam of coal, or a dense forest, is that just stuff sitting there waiting for us to take it? For a really long time, humanity assumed the answer was a resounding yes. But the reality? It's quite different. You see, a resource isn't just something that passively exists. It is everything in our environment that we use to satisfy our needs. But, and this is a big but, with three massive conditions attached. It must be technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable. Think about it. A piece of uranium deep in the ground wasn't a resource to humans 1,000 years ago, purely because we didn't have the technology to access its energy. Human beings ourselves are the absolutely crucial component here. We are the ones who transform raw materials into resources. And this brilliantly illustrates that exact concept. Notice how human beings sit right smack in the center of this interdependent triangle. We interact with nature through the tools and technology we invent, and then we create institutions, things like governments, corporations, and laws, to accelerate our economic development. It's like a giant puzzle, and you literally cannot separate human action from natural resources. Because of that super complex human interaction, we have to map these resources out in a highly specific web just to manage them. We look at their origin, so living biotic things versus abiotic rocks. We evaluate their exhaustibility. Are they renewable, like the wind, or non-renewable, like fossil fuels? We also scale them by ownership, all the way from a private plot of land right up to international waters. And finally, by how fully developed they actually are. Moving right along to Section 2, the sustainability crisis. But what happens when we completely misunderstand this web and treat complex systems just as disposable items to be consumed? Because we historically believed resources were just free gifts, human beings use them indiscriminately. And let me tell you, this led to a massive global problem. The greed of a few individuals led to rapid resource depletion, resulting in a society deeply divided between the haves and the have-nots. And even worse, this indiscriminate exploitation triggered severe ecological crises that threaten every single one of us: global warming, ozone layer depletion, widespread environmental pollution, and severe land degradation. Our planet's future is quite literally in danger if this continues. So what's the fix? The counter-strategy to this crisis is sustainable development. Now, this isn't just some corporate buzzword. True sustainable economic development means that our current progress and growth absolutely cannot compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. It's the understanding that equitable distribution of resources is essential, not just for a sustained quality of life, but for actual global peace. It's honestly fascinating to trace the timeline of how the world finally woke up to this. Back in 1968, the Club of Rome advocated for resource conservation in a really systematic way. Then in 1974, Schumacher published Small is Beautiful, which brought Gandhian philosophy right back into the global spotlight. But the real game changer was the 1987 Brundtland Commission, which officially introduced that concept of sustainable development. And all this momentum, it culminated in June 1992 when over 100 world leaders met at the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit to sign Agenda 21, a massive global action plan to combat environmental damage. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 3, planning for the future. As we bridge the gap from global treaties down to national strategies, the underlying philosophy was perfectly captured decades earlier by Mahatma Gandhi. He famously said, "There is enough for everybody's need and not for anybody's greed." Gandhi really hit the nail on the head. He pinpointed the selfish, exploitative nature of modern technology as the root cause of global resource depletion. He was fiercely against mass production, arguing instead for a production by the masses. And you know what? This principle still remains the philosophical anchor for how a nation should plan today. Now, implementing this planning is incredibly complex, especially in a country as huge and diverse as India. For instance, states like Jharkhand are rich in coal, but then you have Arunachal Pradesh, which lacks infrastructure despite having abundant water. To balance this whole shebang out, India follows three crucial steps. First up, intense surveying, mapping, and inventorying across regions. Step 2 is building the actual planning structure with the right tech, skills, and institutions. And Step 3, making sure these regional plans perfectly sync up with the overall national development goals. Let's zoom in further now. Section 4, India's land and soil. All right, we are jumping from national planning down to the literal ground. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the physical layout of India's priorities. Notice the net sown area, the physical extent of land where crops are actually grown, covers roughly 54% of the country's total reporting area. That's huge. But consider the forest area. It falls dangerously short of the 33% target outlined way back in the 1952 National Forest Policy. That 33% is considered absolutely vital for maintaining ecological balance. Yet we are missing the mark. When we look closely at the soil making up that agricultural land, particularly across the entire northern plains formed by the Himalayan river systems, we find alluvial soils. But even within alluvial soil, there's a really distinct comparison to be made based entirely on age. You have the older Bongar soil, which contains a higher concentration of canker nodules, which are basically just little calcareous deposits. On the flip side, the new alluvial soil, known as hotter, has much finer particles and is significantly more fertile. Beyond the northern plains, India's incredibly varied relief and climate have created distinct regional soils over millions of years, almost like they have their own personalities. We've got the black soil of the Deccan Plateau, which is famous for growing cotton. Moving east and south, the red and yellow soils get their vibrant color from diffused iron. Then there's laterite soil, which is formed under intense tropical rain. And finally, the arid soils of western Rajasthan, which are sandy, highly saline, and totally starved of moisture. Which brings us to our urgent final act. Section 5, saving the ground beneath. So we know what resources are, and we know exactly what soils make up the country. But what is actually happening to them today? Well, continuous use of land over long periods without appropriate management has resulted in severe land degradation. And human activities have aggressively aggravated natural erosive forces. In states like Jharkhand and Odisha, deforestation driven by heavy mining and quarrying has left literal deep scars on the earth. In Gujarat and Rajasthan, overgrazing is a massive culprit. Meanwhile, in agricultural powerhouses like Punjab and Haryana, over-irrigation is actually degrading the land by causing severe waterlogging, which aggressively spikes the soil's salinity. We absolutely cannot ignore the serious societal repercussions of this. Think about it. If 95% of our basic needs for food, shelter, and clothing come directly from the land, we have to protect it. Thankfully, the solutions are actionable. Proper management of grazing and expansive afforestation can heal vast areas. In those arid regions we talked about, planting thorny bushes to stabilize sand dunes is highly effective. And in industrial hubs, properly treating effluents before they are discharged is completely non-negotiable if we want to stop land and water pollution. So the crucial point is this: we are merely the current caretakers. We have shared this exact land with countless past generations who drew their resources from it to survive. The defining question of our time is, what exact state will we leave it in for the next? I challenge you to think about the literal dirt beneath your feet a little differently today. That wraps up this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.